If it goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Out of Bounds podcast. Josh Durso, Nate Sharman here with you right on the heels of the RBC Heritage at Hilton Head. And wow, what a tournament. What a finish. We had extra golf.
Yeah, what a finish indeed, Josh. On the third playoff hole, Matthew Fitzpatrick takes down Jordan Spieth to win his second career PGA Tour win, an elevated event, and now in the trophy case for Matthew Fitzpatrick. Took 3 extra holes, like I said. Matthew Fitzpatrick hits that brilliant 9-iron on the fairway at 18, almost holes it for a 2. Hits it to about a kick in. Jordan Spieth unable to make birdie on that final playoff hole. So Matthew gets to claim the plaid tartan jacket that they give away every year at the RBC Heritage. An emotional moment for sure for Matthew Fitzpatrick. That was a course that him and his family traveled to often when he was a kid. So it was really awesome to see him and some of his family members on that 18th green celebrating the victory. So really cool moment for the Englishman. Matthew Fitzpatrick wins a major last year with the U.S. Open. Now wins an elevated event this year. Can only point towards up for the young man, the 28-year-old. He just keeps on winning.
Yeah, and really interesting too, watching how the last few holes of regulation golf and then the playoff happened with just tough breaks for both with putting. It looked like Jordan was going to hole out on the first 2 playoff holes and end it. Didn't, and just basically left the door open for Fitzpatrick to get the win. And like you said, that 9-iron shot into the green on 18 was incredible. It was interesting because it almost felt like on that last playoff hole that the only way Fitzpatrick was going to win was if he knocked something really tight, because his putter did not help him coming down the stretch. It just didn't. I mean, he absolutely blocked 2 technically 3 what would have been really crucial putts. And then just knocking it close enough to have a kick in for birdie to win the whole thing. That was how it was going to have to happen for him, for sure.
And his putter is unreal all weekend, really. I mean, he shot 63 on Saturday to give him the lead after the third round. And then he shoots follows it up with a 68 on Sunday, made a lot of great putts. But like you said, Josh, down the stretch there, he had a 7-footer on 17 that he pushed right. 18, he has, I think it was like a 25-footer, that possibly for the win. And he misses that right as well, too. But yeah, going back to Jordan Spieth, Josh, that putt on the first playoff hole, probably about a 15-ish footer. It looks like it has the speed, of course, just grazes the right lip and lips out and goes to the back behind the hole. And it looks like, to me, I've watched it a bunch of times. I don't know how that doesn't drop. It looks like it has the right speed and it just doesn't fall for him. And he did the putter raise, right? He did as the ball was trundling towards the hole, like I won, and then you could just see the expression in his face. He drops a putter to the ground and hands to the face. It's just really, really crushing for a guy like Jordan, for him to that ball not to go in. We see him so animated on the greens, but he also played very well the whole tournament too. Followed up that great finish at the Masters last week with another great finish here at the RBC Heritage.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where things really start to shift, I think, right? Because we're going to talk about both of these golfers next and the trajectory that they are now on. Let's start with the winner, Matt Fitzpatrick. Do you think he has what it takes to become the number 1 golfer in the world? Does he have the game to get all the way there and compete with the Rahms and the Schefflers and the McIlroys week in and week out?
I don't know why he doesn't, right? I mean, we've seen this guy these last 2 years. He absolutely ripped up the Euro Tour, right? When he was a younger kid out, getting in his low 20s, and comes over to the PGA Tour, struggles a little bit. But last year he wins the U.S. Open, wins the Heritage this year. So I think he has what it takes, right, to become number one in the world. But like you said, you ended your question with the Rahms, the Schefflers, Thomases, Spieth, all these guys are just so darn good. And every week, someone different can win. So it'd be really challenging for him to get to number one, but I can't sit here and say that he can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's easy to look at these two and see one going a very different direction than the other. And then the historical piece of it, which would have been had Spieth won, he would have become only a handful of golfers who've got 14 wins. So, again, it is an interesting spot for Fitzpatrick to be in right now because his game is so different than Scheffler's or Rahm's.
Yes, it is.
And I'm not really sure. It's really hard to evaluate where he would fit in
He's
that.
So analytical.
Yeah. And if he doesn't hit the ball as far, he's a very unassuming, guy on the course. He's not a loud in your face kind of guy. He's never like drawing a huge crowd. Like today he was literally playing against the crowd. I mean, he was not the fan favorite, and it was very clear watching the entire broadcast, it was very, very clear that the fans in Hilton had wanted Spieth to win. And that was
being
it.
not American, right? Definitely fans are going to turn against you a little bit.
So, I'm curious, and it really comes down to after the major last year, we kind of had expectations of him looking a little sharper through the rest of the season. Didn't happen. I'm curious now if this maybe gives him a little more confidence and maybe we see him put together some better finishes, maybe get another win or two in the next couple months. And I think we could, by, FedEx Cup playoff time, be talking about, maybe he is one of the 3 or 4 or 5 best golfers in the world.
Yeah, like I said, I don't see why not. I mean, beginning of the year, this PGA Tour season, he was not playing very well. He was struggling to make cuts and had some missed cuts in there. Played a little better at the Masters and now gets the win. So that's just huge for the confidence, right, Josh? We
Absolutely.
See a guy that struggled the last few years too, and even before that major, went to the cross-handed chipping technique, had won with that last year, now has won with it again. A lot of times when you see guys do that, you could think about like Kevin Kisner, a guy that's been struggling a little bit around the greens, goes to that cross-handed. But maybe Fitz just loves it. He plays so well with it too. So it's interesting to look at that kind of a guy, right? Maybe things aren't going perfect in his head, but wow, this can really turn on a dime with him getting this win. And I don't see him going anywhere anytime. I don't see him going away anytime soon. Excuse me. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's around in those FedEx Cup playoffs for the end of the year and maybe even picks up 1 or 2 more wins this PGA Tour season.
Definitely not. And I'll also say this. I think there's, we talk about the top 3 or 4 best golfers in the world right now, the guys that we're seeing and hearing about every single week. There's that crop that's just below them.
Yes.
That which includes, by the way, in my opinion, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, that group, Victor Hovland. I think Fitzpatrick safely puts himself in that group now, right?
Yeah, I mean, you might even put him a hair ahead of that, kind of in between those two groups, right?
Right.
He's won a major championship in the last 12 months, right? I mean,
yeah.
A little bit more than that, but it's just unbelievable that he's been able to do this. He's the kind of guy that kind of flies under the radar, right? He's not someone you talk about very much when you're talking about these good level of golfers. He's like you said earlier, he's different. He putts with the pin in every single time. He's always looking at his yardage book. It's down to every single yard. He has every single shot that he's ever hit. If you take a look at that, the Netflix series about him, he has all of his yardage books from forever ago, and he can tell you, from some of his amateur tournaments that the shot he had on number 14, during a random tournament. He's that kind of guy. So he's a little bit different in that sense. And so that's kind of maybe why you're not going to hear about him as much. But although a great player and someone cool to watch, I think it's kind of fun to watch him play.
Yeah. So obviously the other side of that coin is, does this finish for Jordan Spieth, as close as he was, does it become a setback?
I don't think so. He won last year in the playoff in this event against Cantlay. And then he played well at the Masters last week, played well this week, obviously, to get into the playoff. So I don't think it's a setback. It's really, really demoralizing, especially with that putt on 18, like we talked about. that could have went in on that first hole, but I don't think it's a setback for him. Do you think so?
I don't. And I pretty much think that he can look at this week and he can say there weren't any mental mistakes. Right. Like, I don't think he can consider those missed putts mental mistakes. He didn't do anything stupid coming down the back nine that would have taken him out. I think at the end of the day, he's got to feel pretty good about where his game is. Right. And if nothing else, sure, he hasn't won, but boy, he's been hanging around.
Right.
And to have racked up the top 10s, top 5 situation that he's, put himself into over the last two months or so, you got to feel good, right? You got to feel good about it.
I thought he made a mental mistake on 10 today. He hit his tee shot down the left side. It took a couple bounces, hops in the water. So, that's something. He was right near the lead at that time. And you could say, oh no, for Jordan, like you said, the mental mistakes could kind of pile up there, but he got up and down from 165 yards, makes par. So, and he goes to play safe golf the rest of the way through. But yeah, like Jordan has said, like you have said, those mental mistakes really do quite get him, but he was able to avoid that on the back nine today.
And that's a great example because he didn't compound that with more errors, right? Which is what we had seen, I believe it was the second round or the first round from the Masters where, he hit a bad tee shot and then made a really bad decision. And that's kind of the thing that he avoided there. But, I think he continues to go the right direction. I think he should be a favorite for the PGA, honestly, given where his game is right now. So, it'll be interesting to see how the next, 3-4 weeks play out for him.
Right. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to watch him at Oak Hill coming up soon here. We got to talk about slow play, though, Josh. I know you don't love slow play, of course. We talked about that last week, but it reared its ugly head a little bit, I would say, today in the coverage. And it pains me to say it, but I think Patrick Cantlay was one of the main culprits of it. He had a really good jab though on Thursday. We saw even from us some of this slow play kind of stuff coming out from Patrick Cantlay all week. On Thursday, he goes and makes an ace on one of the par threes, and he tweets out the video and says "playing faster!" exclamation point. So that was a great jab by Cantlay. I always love those kind of things from players. But yeah, he took a good amount of time today. I think they took about a little over 5 hours to play, which isn't great. I understand these guys are playing for a $20 million purse and, every shot matters. But I think we just need to find a way to like you said before, Josh, put these guys on a clock and enforce the rules a little bit better. The main thing for me comes in mind is number 14. Cantlay hit his second shot on the par 3 and it rolled over the green and almost into the water. But it got stuck in between a couple pieces of wood on the barrier before the water. And he took what felt like 10 to 15 minutes to decide if he wanted to drop or hit the shot. He ends up hitting the shot and hits an immaculate shot right near the hole and makes 4. So it ended up being the right decision for Patrick, but I would have liked to see him make it a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I think watching today, and we were talking a little bit here before we came on about where Jordan Spieth fits in that whole debate, how fast of a player he is. He's certainly not as fast as a Fitzpatrick. Like Matt clearly seems like a faster player.
Yes,
but he's kind of in the middle. And, I don't think it's all on guys like Cantlay who clearly play slower than the rest of the field. Like there are certain guys who are clearly slower than the rest of the field. I think the problem is a little more systemic than that, which is why the tour really should step up and do something. Because I think everybody's a little slower now than they were a bunch of years ago. And it's just slowing everything down completely.
Yeah, so playing for so much money. Yeah. I mean, that's part of that, right?
You know what? Like I think that's I honestly think that's a terrible excuse. I hate to say it. And there's going to be a lot of people who think that's a dumb, boneheaded thing for me to say. But, these guys are playing for that much money every single week. We're not talking about, the non-elevated events. We're talking about the elevated events where these guys are absolutely rolling in it anyway. So I don't want to hear about the money being a factor. Like these guys aren't playing for money. Their lives are very much secure. Their families are very much secure for that top 50. This is about basically players creating a product that winds up being tougher to watch because of how they're moving through the process and because of the lack of enforcement. You enforce faster play, clamp down on slower play, and everyone will naturally go a little faster. And that's all the tour needs to do. The tour doesn't need to make any rash, big changes. We've said it over and over again. The tour just needs to enforce what's already basically on the books.
Yeah, agreed 100%. I really like that take when you said it's not just Patrick Cantlay, because I think I might have explained what I think a little bit incorrectly. And you are 100% right. It's not just him. It's just magnified with him since he's been, towards the end of these tournaments, these last couple of weeks. But it's just, oh man, I don't know. It's just really not good for the game too if these guys are going to take so long. So I really think the PGA Tour needs to step in.
Yeah, like I don't know, and maybe it's some combination of minor changes that get us to where we need to be. But realistically, like these final rounds, even the most important ones, 4 to 4.5 hours should be the expectation. They're professionals. They're playing in the best of circumstances. They are, when weather is a factor, nobody's talking about that. We're talking
they were
about
playing in threesomes today, which makes it a little bit slower, of course, but yeah.
Even still, like if that's something that needs to be adjusted, then adjust that. But, I think that it's more of a let's tell the guys what the goal is and see if these guys can play to that goal. Because I wonder if the tour has even done anything like that, where they say, hey, look, we'd like to hit such and such a time. That means everybody needs to take 6 fewer minutes per golf round. Okay, let's do that. And see, evaluate where the tour is after a few events and go from there. I just think let them play and kind of have no enforcement. I don't think it's a great look for the tour, and I definitely don't think it's a good thing for golf. I think I've said it a million times. It really hurts the golf industry. When the average person is sitting at home and seeing guys on tour take as long as they are to get from walking up to a shot to actually hitting that shot.
Agreed. Yeah. One thing we did see good out of the PGA Tour, though, this week is on the broadcast. That's something we've talked about a lot, right? Yeah. With quality of broadcast not being great and, commercials being a problem too. Well, the quality I thought was great this week. From what I watched, it was pretty good. And then they were able to bring in Jon Rahm on Sunday, and he sat down for what felt like a good half an hour for a couple holes they played. And he was able to provide his analysis, and he was really, really a natural in the booth, I thought. So it was really fun to listen to, the Masters champ talk about some different things going on the course. And it was really awesome from him too, because he's had this whirlwind of a past week, right? I mean, he's won the Masters. He's had to do all this media for that, of course. Then he gets to the golf course and focuses for the RBC Heritage, plays extremely well, comes in the top 20, then sits down in the booth. Just hats off to Jon Rahm. Amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. I want to see more of it. I want to see I want to see the best golfers in the world. I want to see their personalities on full display, and situations like the one that the tour and the broadcast created today is the picture perfect opportunity to do that. I think back to my childhood growing up watching golf. I didn't see enough of Phil. I didn't see enough of Tiger. I didn't see enough of Ernie Els. I didn't see enough of Vijay Singh, the top golfers when they were at their peak. I didn't see enough of those guys kind of doing non-golf things and that, personality brand being built. It was also really kind of interesting listening today because Rahm was a natural. It was very natural, him in the booth, and his delivery was really, really awesome. And, I think this could be probably a sign of things to come. I would assume that the tour is going to be pushing for more of this through the year.
Talk about a guy that loves golf, Jon Rahm. He just absolutely loves to play. And then they have quoted him from, he sits down to go to bed or lays down and he's watching old YouTube clips, right? Of past tournaments and stuff, and just is really, really good for the game of golf. Jon Rahm is just a really good person to have in that role, and he's also really good at the game too. So it's just amazing to have him. But I just really liked what the tour has done this season to try to make the broadcast better. We've seen these walk-along interviews. We saw one on Saturday with Jimmy Walker. We saw just playing every single these little interviews with the mic and the AirPod. There's just so much fun to try something different. That's something I've talked about with some other different issues that I've seen happen. Try something different and see how fans like it. Maybe you bring a guy in to do the booth and they're not a natural like Jon Rahm. That's okay. You're trying something. And if it doesn't go perfect and you have to maybe ditch it quicker than you plan to or something like that, that's okay too. Just try something different and try to, like you said, market your fans the best way you possibly can, because that's how you get the best product on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, it absolutely comes down to just needing more of it. We need more of that. I think the biggest challenge so far has just been the technical hurdle. The walk-alongs are great, except the quality is terrible because they're using an AirPod. I think at some point they'll get that more refined. It's cool.
But that's okay with the audio if the audio quality is not going to be perfect at first,
Right. Absolutely.
I don't want that to ever be a hurdle for trying something. Maybe you have 5 seconds of dead air because you're trying something different on the course with a different form of microphone, like an AirPod or something. At the end of the day, in my opinion, anyway, that's not the worst thing in the world. If you have 5 seconds of silence or 10 seconds of silence for that matter too, because you're trying to get an AirPod in somebody's ear while they're walking up to a hole, because the result could pay dividends. And we've seen it have with some really good on-course interviews this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the one piece of news that we have here that we definitely need to talk about that isn't related to the Heritage. Well, is, but isn't. Rory withdrawing winds up costing him $3 million. $3
million out of the player performance fund for Rory McIlroy. Like I said, he withdraws from his second elevated event of the season. PGA Tour, beginning of the year, says, nope, you can only withdraw from one elevated event from the PGA Tour season. Rory skipped the first one this century back to the beginning of the PGA Tour season. And it was going to be really interesting because I wasn't sure what the PGA Tour was going to do. They previously said that if you missed more than one elevated event, then you would lose player performance money, and they came through with it. We talked about Rory. They might give him a pass because he's Rory and he's done so much for the tour, but nope. They dock him $3 million for missing the second elevated event of the season. Of course, Rory, like you said earlier, these guys aren't doing it for the money. A lot of them, these top player guys, so it's not a big deal, but $3 million is a lot of money even at the end of the day for anybody. So I just wanted to get your take on whether you think it's good or it's good that the tour followed through, or if they should have maybe looked the other way for a guy like Rory.
I think it's good that the tour followed through because I think they had to. If they didn't, it would have set a really bad precedent, especially since this is basically the first application of the rule that they laid out in the beginning, right? Yeah. Also, I don't think the money is that big a deal. Obviously, it sounds like a wad of cash, but when you consider the fact that we have 3 majors left and plenty of elevated events, plus the FedEx Cup playoffs, he's going to have more than a fair opportunity to earn that $3 million back. Right. So if, it's a relatively small amount of money, and it kind of points to just how much money these guys are actually playing for now and how much more money they're making, even if they aren't winning. Where even if Rory doesn't play great and he just has a bunch of like top 15, top 10 finishes, he'll make that $3 million up by the end of the year. That's not, that's not a big deal.
It just kind of disappoints me that if the reason that Rory didn't play this week is just because he's playing poorly. I think that can set up a bad, visual for some young fans, where if Rory's able to kind of throw the towel in because he missed the cut at the Masters last week and his game is not in the right spot. I'm okay with, making sure your mentals are okay and making sure you're right before you play, of course, if that's the problem. But if it's purely from a golf standpoint, then I think I'm a little disappointed, because you have a guy like Jon Rahm who won the Masters and then plays in the RBC Heritage. They quoted him before the round. They asked him, you could have withdrawn. You have one available time to withdraw during the season. And he had just an amazing quote where he talked about if he puts himself into the shoes of some kids that came to the tournament, and how sad they would be if the guy that won the green jacket, the Masters champion, wasn't there. So I just thought that was really cool from Jon Rahm to say that. But yeah, Rory, he's got to walk the walk, right? He's definitely talked the talk these last 6-8 months about the PGA Tour, and I'm really going to be interested to see Rory's next start and where he is from a golf standpoint.
Well, so I'm more interested, I guess, in seeing how he answers the questions that reporters ultimately throw at him the next time he's at an event. We'll probably see him here in a couple of weeks. And before any golf swings happen, he's going to get that question. Why'd you skip? Where are you? What's going on? And I'm guessing that we're going to hear that it was just he needed to unplug. He wasn't there. And some people will take that as, his game's not there, so he's just unplugging because of where his game is. But golf is so mental. And at the end of the day, this was probably a decision more based on mental health than anything else. And you can't criticize him. You can't criticize a guy for that. And frankly, I think given the new reality of the tour, I think the tour may have to have some leeway with, what maybe it's not one skipped elevated event per year. Maybe it's 2 or 3. Because I think, there is the potential. There's a greater potential now for these top tier guys to get worn down and get into a bad place. Right. And that just for the health of the game and for the health of golf, I don't think that's a good idea either. I also think, look, like I said it before and I'm going to say it again, and I'll keep saying it every week until Jay Monahan actually acts like a commissioner. Rory McIlroy has been the commissioner of the PGA Tour for the last 2 years now, with the help of Tiger Woods a little bit, but Tiger just does what Tiger does. And, he's more of the force behind the scenes rather than the face and the voice in front of the camera. That's been Rory the whole way. And I think it's going to be a scenario for the tour in general where there will always need to be that person. So there will always have to be a Rory or a Rahm or somebody who's speaking on behalf of the tour if the Monahan administration continues to not, right? And that is not a winning combination for Rory McIlroy and the PGA Tour. And, I really think it's not a winning combination for Rory's mental health. Yes. And more than anything else, that's kind of where I feel like he is. And for those reasons, you think about a scenario in which he would have needed to unplug and say, I'm comfortable with essentially being charged $3 million.
Right.
It had to be some pretty serious circumstances, in my opinion.
For sure. So yeah, I'll wait to see when we see Rory next. Hopefully everything's going okay with him and his camp. Yeah. But next week we keep on chugging. We got the Zurich Classic coming up. A lot of fun. That's a 2-person team event. A little bit of fun to see a little bit of mixture of golf being played. We'll talk a little bit more about that on our Wednesday edition. But
absolutely.
Always a fun event to watch.
All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Out of Bounds. We'll be back on Wednesday with a preview episode of the Zurich Classic. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram for more golf news, and be sure to subscribe to our new YouTube channel. As always, whether it is down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website at fingerlakes1.com. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at OutOfBoundsFL1. See you next time on Out of Bounds.